Hey, it's KR here. Today's topic about how long should you run a campaign or think about it. It's interesting. It came out of two kind of discussions. One was someone on my Discord channel said, "Hey, I'm going to run a campaign. I want it to be 10 sessions long." And what I'm wondering is if a player character dies, let's say session 8, they come back and they've got 2 sessions to go. And how is that going to be? The investment that their character is going to have in my storyline or however, whatever is happening is not gonna be there. And then I think it was a discussion with Dan Norton. Check my podcast, Monsters and Treasure. I think it was offline. We were just talking about the length of campaigns. We run sandboxes, and they tend to just kinda go on and on and on, right? Because why shouldn't they? The players are exploring your world, they're just figuring things out, storylines come up, they go, they develop. But I started thinking, in terms of my own campaigns, they sort of ended. A lot of times real life issues got in the way, people moving or getting jobs, or myself deciding that, this thing's gone on far enough. Especially in the old days, you got up to a certain level, it was much harder to go up in those levels. Or if you just started milestoning, it became the levels were sort of unworkable. But typically there was never a sense of we're gonna do this forever and ever. I played at 3.5. I ran a thing with that system for like 8 years. Actually, then off and on 13. It's 2000 to 2013. But I ran different campaigns, and people stepped in and ran, or we went through a period where we ran, games and stuff, board games and different things. And I started thinking about why they ended and whether or not it might be a good idea to set a specific time. Now, 10 sessions, if you play every week, that's 10 weeks. Let's say, or every other week, it's 20. So it's almost half a year. So, less than 6 months. Is that something where you say, hey, this is all we're going to play? And are there advantages to setting a time limit as opposed to just some infinite thing where when it does peter out or end, it might be unsatisfactory? Or is it better to just let them go until they sort of, die a natural death? And when that happens, is it unsatisfying? Maybe if you've got some big storyline going and it ends and everyone goes, okay, that's it. But oftentimes it just sort of ends. It just, or by mutual decision, is that as satisfying? So what I did was I started thinking about it. I started thinking about, so what are the advantages and disadvantages? Well, one advantage of having a set time, and I don't know whether 10 sessions, I might say we're going to play for, let's say, a year. And we're just gonna run the sandbox, see what happens, but that's what I want to invest. Well, players know, okay, I've got 1 year, once a week, so that's 52 potential sessions, not really, high 40s. That's still a lot of D&D. Or even every other week, that's 26, now see, you start to get the math. Because I don't really run a linear type campaign where I have a storyline, and once it's done, it's done. But what it does do, first of all, the commitment. People know this is my commitment to this campaign, not an infinite storyline. Because if you only have so many players, and again, depending on your system and how it works, having people come and go all the time kind of is a drag, right? And if it's an infinite one, well, that's the way it goes. Whereas if I've only got, let's say you're going to run 6 months, once a week, 26 sessions, it goes by quick. I can't afford to miss. So maybe the player investment is going to be higher if you say, this is how long we're going to run. The other thing, it takes pressure off you as a GM in a way, because you're thinking, okay, I'm just going to have these, we're going to have this little area and I'm going to flesh these things out, but the players are going to go and investigate things. And I don't have to keep thinking up things and creating and thinking and remembering things, all the things that happened in the past. And here's another one that I've thought about. Let's say you're going to play sort of an oddball type character, something you've never played, never knew if you wanted to play. And if that campaign is only going to be, let's say, the 10 session one, might be fun to play a character like that for 10 sessions. That's still 40 hours if you play the standard 4-hour game. Or maybe you're going to make some oddball choices, even if, because the reverse could be true. Well, okay, my guy died, but it's only going to run for this many sessions. I'll roll up another guy, and it doesn't bother me to have that level of investment. In fact, it's kind of liberating. It's liberating to know that I'm just going to play in this world for this long, and I don't have to just commit. Because another thing is, if you're in a campaign and it's going on, and you want to drop out, you may feel guilty about dropping out. You may feel like I'm going to let the group down. Whereas if it ends, you can just say, okay, that's it for me. And you know what? Real life issues are coming in, or maybe the new setting, or someone else is going to run, or another system we're going to run that. And you think, okay, I can do that. But having those set time limits, I only have to invest this much as opposed to this infinite thing. And one caveat here, this is typically a homebrewed world, which is what my channel is about, and sort of the sandbox infinite world. If you're running a module or adventure path or some set setting, Curse of Strahd, let's say, or something like that, there's an ending to that. We know what we're going to do in that game, right? So this is about your own sandbox. Another nice thing about this is if you are, let's say it's the first time you're GMing, or the first time that you're GMing with a new group, and you say, you know what, we're going to run this. I want to run 10 sessions of this. I had this idea. And maybe you just hinted, that's all I want to do or whatever. And then you run those sessions. And then you can ask the players, hey, are you guys interested in keeping this going? You guys want to run more? Because actually I got some ideas. And let them say yes or no. Because as I said, if you've got a campaign that's just going and going and going and people don't want to necessarily drop out or whatever, whereas if everyone just says, no, I think this is a really good idea, or you as the GM say that, saying what happens to me a lot, you just go, let's do something else. Oh, you run something, or let's do that system, or hey, I bought this, let's try it. Whatever it is. Having that set time period and not just infinite can make that easier to do. But I would also say there may be some limitations to, again, the classic sandbox infinite campaign has some interesting advantages that I think setting a limit can interfere with. Things like rushed storytelling, when you come up with an idea and you want the players to be able to explore it, and you've only got a certain amount of time, and you start to think to yourself, I got to get through this or that, or I want to, things are happening and I'm unfolding ideas I have, and you start to rush things. And in a similar way, character development, if we're hurtling along and we can see the end coming, players may not have that time to really create, because some of the interesting character quirks come out of just some side thing or random thing, or, we found this idea and we don't have a ticking clock or anything we're wanting, so let's go do this. We never thought we would. And you're not getting into what they used to call a shaggy dog story, which is just one thing, we're done. And nothing ever connects. You can do that in a long form game. You can go from one thing to another because you're always going to come back because there's no limit on how many times you can play. The other thing is your system may, if you have a system where the battles are really complicated and your players like to fight them, you may find yourself in a situation where you start to feel pressure about, we only got 4 sessions left, or even 6 sessions. And if we have this big battle here or there, or, you start hand waving things that you wouldn't ordinarily hand wave. It's because, again, if people enjoy it and they have a complex system with very involved characters, and that's what they like, and you're saying we're only going to play so long, a very limited time, you can find yourself caught between, two kind of competing ways to play the game. Because again, the sandbox homebrew is inherently, unless you just set up a linear storyline, which I never do, but I guess people do. Here's the villain, here's the story, go get him and kill him, Strahd-esque. Okay, well then but again, if you play 10 sessions of Strahd and you're not anywhere near getting ready to defeat him, what do? You have a showdown right there. And so again, with those linear story things, you're going to have to eliminate things and give people stuff and whatever so that we can get to the end. We only got 1 session left. So I'm going to juggle things around so that you can take on the big villain in a good fashion. That's not very satisfying. When you have a long-term open-ended campaign, you don't worry about that. And when we talk about character investment, in my world, character investment often means they create subplots within my world. They buy businesses, they start helping other, individuals in the world. They get involved in politics. They do all sorts of things that are very easy to not just conceive of, but execute, because you're still doing all your adventuring and finding things and exploring, but you've got these background storylines going all the time that take time to develop. You're not going to have those if you've got a time limit, or at least they're not going to be as well developed. And then one more aspect of player investment is, if you're leveling You know you're gonna play 10 or 20, I'll just say 26 sessions, I don't know. Okay. So if you level every 4 sessions or 5 or, well, you can go 3 if you're gonna go hurry. Do you do that? Do you level every 3 sessions? How do you do that? Let's say you've managed to get in. Let's say you're really, we'll really be optimistic and say 23 sessions, right? Or 24 out of that's 8th level. And if you go 4 sessions, that's 6th. Is that gonna be satisfying? Maybe it will be. I think 6th level is still pretty impressive. So the temptation is to go with that 3. Well, here's the problem with leveling up fast, because I just had a player say this to me in my campaign. He said, because someone asked, "Oh, are we up yet?" And I'm calculating the experience. I said, "No, you're not there." And he said, "I don't mind that. I actually like learning about my character. I like seeing all the things they can do." Again, this is Pathfinder, very complicated. Every character is totally different from every other character. There's all sorts of different options. And he said, "I enjoy that. I enjoy learning about my character." Well, you're not going to get that if the temptation is, well, we're going to play for 6 months. Now, again, if you say, well, we're going to play for 6 months, an average of, 4 sessions a level, so that's going to be 6th level, and everyone goes, okay. I've seen people, I saw just recently one where they were going to play to 4th level, and that was it. They were going to wait till they got to 4th level, and then I think the person said that because there's it's kind of more of a linear thing, I think. I don't remember the details, but I just was listening thinking, oh, that's interesting. You're going to go to 4th level. Because in an infinite campaign, however long you're going to go up in level, you're going to get up high, right? And that's something the players can enjoy. So do you force that? And then, so you've got that investment, you've got the storylines, you've got, the leveling, all that stuff. On the other hand, like I said, I think there may be an unburdening in a weird way about having a set, we're going to run this long. When we start getting close to it, maybe we all decide we're having so much fun, we're going to keep going. But of course, be careful, because maybe that excitement was knowing that things were going to come to a close. Or maybe there are a couple of players that don't want to continue. So that creates urgency. That creates something, especially if they want to get something done, they're going to focus all their energy on something in the sandbox style. And they're going to get that done to finish, and then that's satisfying. Because the final thing is, of course, do you get a satisfying ending if you know this is it? We've got 3 more sessions to go. What are we going to do? Maybe that's more satisfying, right? Maybe that I ended a campaign, and I ended it out of my choice. The players are about 11th level, and they wanted to revive this other player, get this restoration spell or something, and they worked the last few weeks to get it, and they did. And a restoration. It was very satisfying for them. Again, it ended because my real life things were coming up and I just couldn't run anymore. So I think that artificial or, the decision to limit your campaign can increase, the stakes and whatever, and make that ending finish. I'd love to hear some comments on this and what you think, if you've done that, limiting the number of sessions, always having infinite. Maybe you only play modules, and so there you go. You just, do whatever as you go through the books. Quick shout out to my Patreon support. This week I did a mountain town map, really fun, talking about the different areas of the town. And on all of you out there, if you like my video, like it and subscribe to me and all that stuff. Most importantly, keep playing an RPG game, whichever one you choose and however long you wish, and tell somebody else about it.